Welcome, everybody, to the Casually Hardcore Podcast. My name is Brian, and this is your spoiler warning. We're going to be talking about spoilers for the latest expansion, Shadowbringers. So if you have not completed that story, it's highly recommended that you do so. You won't regret it. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this podcast, and we'll see you next time. Yeah.
But once he actually changed to Innocence, I didn't feel like it matched Innocence as much, but it was still perfect. I was so upset saying that everybody told him that that's what it was. And oh my God, when you find him eating the sin eaters, I was like, what is he doing? I didn't know Light Warden could do that. I don't know if he was the only one that did that. I have no idea, but I was disgusted.
Welcome, everybody, to Casually Hardcore, episode 35. I'm one of your hosts, Brian. Joining us is Chris, and we have Xandrii back on the show after completing Heaven's Word, completing Stormblood, and completing probably the piece de resistance of Shadowbringers. I am very excited to sit down and talk to you today about Shadowbringers. There's probably going to be a little bit of WoW connection, too, because essentially from a kind of a narrative within MMOs, that's kind of the general theme for the show. But as always, we're going to kind of see where this takes us and how far we go. Thanks for everybody who's joining us in chat. Also, I do want to say, thanks to obviously I can't even think, Exit Lag for their partnership with us. If you guys check out the link below in the description, you can use the code DOWORK for 20% off. If you're having some lag issues, check it out. I've heard nothing but good from the 14 community coming back and saying good things about it. You can also find this podcast on Spotify, iTunes, the SoundCloud, Google Play, wherever pretty much podcasts are found. So be sure to check that out. Xandrii, you completed the story. How do you feel?
Finally!
How do you feel?
I went through such a roller coaster of emotions. It wasn't even funny. I thought people were dying. They didn't die. I thought people were going to die, and then they were fine. And then the whole Minfilia and Oracle of Light and Ardbert, which obviously we'll get into all of the nitty gritty, but there were times when I wanted to scream at Yoshi P. There were times when I wanted to hug Yoshi P. It was intense. I don't think I've ever gotten so emotional, possibly regardless of video games. I don't think I've ever even gotten this emotional watching a movie. It was insane. I'm sure people can.
What was your cry counter at the end when you got through the last trial? Was it 23? 20?
28.
28. I knew it was somewhere in the 20s.
Yeah, 28.
Intense.
Emet-Selch. Everything with Emet-Selch and everybody in Amarat, which please let me know if I pronounced something incorrectly, because
don't ask me.
We won't know.
Everybody in chat is just like, it's this way. No, it's pronounced this way. No, it's pronounced this way. And I'm like, okay, you're doing
sounds more elegant as Amaro, and I don't think that's right, but I like it.
My rule of thumb is, do you understand what I'm talking about? If so, then we shall carry on.
Exactly. But all of that just really got me. It just pretty much every single time I saw Ardbert, I teared up.
Yeah.
Every single time I saw Urianger, because he's hot now, I teared up out of pure joy.
The feels.
Everything that happens with Thancred, when you're trying to bring who is now Reen to meet Minfilia or the Oracle of Light from the time, when Thancred is pitted against Ranjit and you have to play Thancred.
Yes.
And I didn't realize that he was just reminiscing. I thought that it was like, your life flashing before your eyes as you pass on. Mm-hmm. And so the whole time I'm sitting there, I'm like ugly crying. Mm-hmm. I had worn quite a bit of eye makeup that day too, because my allergies have been killing me, so they've been awful. And it was just all like, it was so bad. And everybody's like, just wait. And it was during a 12-hour stream marathon. Yeah. And so you go back and you go to hand in the quest that says find Thancred. And I'm bawling even more just because of that, because you're literally talking to Reen. And I, as the player, know that he is dead, but she doesn't. We're going to find him. I'm like, it's going to be so horrible. It's going to be so bad. And then I'm walking up, and everybody in chat is laughing, and I have no idea why, because I'm so tired that I had no idea what was going on. I didn't realize that you handed in the quest to Thancred until I was this close.
Yeah, you're like, wait a minute, he's standing.
I looked up and I was like, oh
He's standing.
Oh my, I was so, because was like, I teared up throughout the whole game. You know, I teared up for Nidhogg. I teared up for hearing Hraesvelgur's story. I teared up for Iceheart. I teared up for Xenos. Xenos is a very different character, let me say.
Yeah, I want to touch on that. I'd like to get your thoughts on it, but continue, please. Oh, yeah, I'm going to jump in with a minor spoiler warning to everybody out there. Like, honestly, like, if you haven't finished the story, please bookmark this podcast. It's going to be, I think, a really good time. Come check it out. Our last podcast was actually with Dado from Dado Does Nesty over on YouTube, and that was a heck of a lot of fun. It was really interesting to get his insight. So we've been just knee deep into the MMO RPG kind of world, and I think that's really kind of a perfect conversation for the story itself. Like, you're talking Xenos as a character, you're talking Ranjit. Like, there are some really beautiful themes. Like, that's the thing that I kind of connected with. That, like, even chat saying, like, I felt bad for Emet-Selch. Like, honestly, that had to be the most well-written villain that we've had to date. And we've had some good villains. I've always kind of said the villain, the best kind of villain is the villain who is he's justified in his thing. The reason that they're opposite to us, the reason is it's not that their goals are like bad. It's the actions in which they are striving to achieve said goals. Chris, he's not a villain. Let's just do it. What's happening here? Go ahead.
Villain. We can jump world to world and just do what we do, and like, I don't even understand what's going on here, but I'm going to go just disrupt things because I don't understand them, and it's going to be fine because I'm from the source. And yet this guy that remembers things from before our memories has to be inherently bad. I do think that he's made some poor decisions, but I don't think he's a villain. I think he's defending people and he's trying to get to a better form of the world. I don't know. I think I'm an Asian, guys.
I don't think he's a villain either, actually. I agree. I agree.
I want to hear Xandrie's point because I'm going to, spoiler alert, you're both wrong, but continue, please.
Everybody's been arguing with me for stream too, but I'm biased because I love Emet. I love Emet as a character. From the moment he inhabited Solus's body, from when he gets shot, and, you know, just comes back and talks about his plans about going to the First and visiting us. I've loved him. I love the flamboyant way that he speaks, how he, you know, holds himself, how he walks. He is unreal. He's just such a cool character. We talk about him in chat as best boy. But for me, it was not even an Asian thing. It was more like an ancient thing. So this whole Zodiark v. Hydaelyn story where I was actually talking about this in chat last night, how, you know, there was destruction wrought, you know, and in the very beginning with the ancients, and they didn't know why. So there have been a lot of there's been a lot of theory crafting that it was because of the experiments that they did that had gone wrong, that they didn't think they would have gone wrong or whatever. It's open-ended. You don't essentially know.
Right.
And he had this huge burden on his shoulders because of people sacrificing themselves for their ether to feed Zodiark. And once Zodiark was actually summoned, the flora was coming back, and there was a promise. It wasn't necessarily set in stone, but there was the promise that if there was more sacrifice, that it would bring the original population of ancients that had sacrificed themselves back.
Right.
And I think there's a misconception there. I think a lot of people think that it was going to be the other half of the ancients to bring back the original half of the ancients. But I think it was a lot of the flora that he brought back, sacrificing some of the ether of the flora to bring these people back. But again, there wasn't necessarily a complete factual, you know, you didn't have its word, like it's Zodiark's word. You know, I understand bad that you have to sacrifice for him, but a lot of people actually think that Hydaelyn is the villain rather than Emmett, because Emmett has this on his shoulders. Like, he's really upset. People have sacrificed themselves. He doesn't believe that anybody on the source would do that, that people couldn't be that selfless. The ancients are so philosophical. They're able to debate without having it affect their everyday lives.
Their raw power of creation is mind-boggling. The fact that like they had to create a bureaucracy because of it, because it's like it just shows the power of creation.
It's a patent office. Like straight up.
It's amazing. And like, what would you do, you know? And I think that there was that misconception. But then, I mean, it is kind of bad that he said that he would sacrifice people from the source. That's kind of bad. But I don't know. I think that he was a really great character, because I think that in a way he was becoming emotionally attached to the Warrior of Light and the Scions by the amount of truth that he was telling. Like, he never actually lied to you. Mm-hmm. He was telling you the truth. He thought you could harness the light. Whether or not it was for a good reason or not, he believed in you. And a lot of people have actually said that he didn't exert his full power when he turned into Hades either, because he became so emotionally attached to the Scions and what they were doing that he let himself be defeated, therefore not necessarily a villain or inherently evil as we or others have perceived him to be. I don't know if I agree with that, but I just think he's a badass character.
Oh, absolutely. So he lived for 1,000 years. Like, he's been around for longer than we can comprehend. He's fallen in love. He's had families. He's had kids. He's experienced life and everything that there is with it. The interesting and how everything is connected with their failed experiment with the 13th, where they essentially turned it into the void, and then the rest, and then they figured out how to do the rejoinings. Like, he's a man on a quest, and I think essentially that's kind of what was tragic about his story. Why he's a villain in my mind is that essentially they've had a kind of a noble purpose. And that's why I think the best villains start off with that. Like, we're going to rid the world of evil. And then you end up looking back after the quest and you're like, oh, to rid the world of evil, like we wrecked and brought, about such evil. And then we ourselves were corrupted by it. And so the question that I have, especially when it comes down to the rejoining, is that when we look at how the game is going, I'm all for the rejoining. I think that ultimately is the correct way forward. The world has been sundered. We have these shards out there that remain, and then we have these other shards that have been absorbed. They're no more. But is there a way to do it without genocide?
Right.
Is there a way to be done? And did it require another 1,000 years on that own? And I think one of the coolest moments, and I said this as a part of my story review, is that the hero, the Warrior of Light, really shows their just their heroic nature in that exchange with Emet-Selch, when he's essentially driven by the fear of being forgotten, and his line, remember that we existed, and then the Warrior Light nods, giving him a gift, that gift of peace, letting him know that it's like, yeah, we're not going to forget you, and that's, I think, was such a powerful moment, because it's so easy to see, that you could be like, heck no, dude, like, we beat you. You're done. But I thought that was just, I think, a beautiful moment between those characters. Chris,
I think to call him a villain, it's possible that you're admitting that the player population, not the characters, the player population is tempered by Hydaelyn.
Oh, absolutely, we're tempered.
We cannot see the other side. We just have no concept of the other side. And it is possible that both are equally flawed.
Yeah.
That you're judging his methods as being false, but like, how do we know 5 expansions from now ours aren't false?
Right. It's perception.
What is this magic thing that we're doing with 1,000,000 years less knowledge than him that's so much better? Like, I'm not convinced we're bettering things. We go into dungeons and wipe it out thousands of times a day. That can't be great for,
But that's part of why I have really, really been drawn to 14, is just because they take those ideas. Like, those are things that you see every day in real life. Your morality is tested, your character is tested with things like this. And there's also, that whole Hydaelyn v Zodiac thing. Mm-hmm. We would have never known about how Zodiac was brought about. We would have never known about Zodiac or the Zodiac and Hydaelyn being primals because of what we were taught coming from somewhere else. And it's kind of like history.
Right.
Like, you are explained different things in history and who was right and who was wrong in a very vague sense of the word, depending on where you were brought up and what you learned. And I think it's really cool that they were able to have that as an undertone. I feel like it's been an undertone since Stormblood, because you have your morality tested with Yatsuyu. She's a horrible person. She, did all of these things, but the way she came about was tragic. The way that she ended up being who she is tragic. Then she has all memory lost of hurting these people. So then it's like, okay, is it okay to kill her? Is it okay to imprison her? She doesn't remember. But then gaining all of that memory back and, I can't think of the word, but coinciding with a primal, then all of that happens. But then she kills her brother, and then you're like, okay, so do I feel good that she killed her brother? Do I feel bad that she killed her brother? Do I feel good for her? Do I feel bad for her? Is this a win? And I feel the same way about Xenos too. When Xenos, I feel like it's so much spoiler alert right now.
You're sorry. Good. Like we said, we gave a spoiler warning earlier in the show, so.
But it's so funny because everybody talked about how evil Xenos was, how it was all about the hunt, how it was everything. And everybody was like, oh, you killed him. And when he did that, when he slit his throat, I had to take a moment. I was like, I don't see this as a victory.
Right.
At all. A, we weren't the ones to do it. He did it himself. B, he literally talks about how he hasn't been able to feel anything until he's fought against you. And I understand that's psychopathic behavior, but in the same time, he makes you feel like you really were the reason that he was able to end it.
Yeah.
But then but the reason that you're able to end it and then calling you a friend, I was like, oh, it really hit me. And that's the thing, what's right, what's wrong. He did good things for good people as well in the wrong way. Like, he saved Yatsuyu's brother unintentionally. He was just trying to kill someone in the battle when Yatsuyu's brother, his name escapes me at the moment, I'm sorry. But when there's that cinematic where, this soldier is coming over to kill him, it was like somebody from Kugane, and Xenos kills that guy. So what comes out of that is that he saves Yatsuyu's brother, who ends up becoming his fanboy. Did he meet him? No, he just wanted to kill the guy. But he did technically a good thing for somebody who, at the time, if you hadn't known his past and how he reacted toward Yatsuyu, would have been a good person. This boy fell in love with Xenos because of that. So it's just crazy. There's just so much, and it's all shades of gray. And I think that really hooks you into the story even more than any game I've ever played, to be honest.
Yeah.
So who's your favorite character so far?
Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
My absolute favorite character is Emmett, for sure.
Oh, yeah?
He's been my favorite character since he was introduced. I've loved everything about him. I love the way he saunters. I love his long drawls. I love how he literally, there was a perfect meme that talked about him where he was like, I'm going to follow you guys. And then they're like, no, you can't. And he goes, wait, I have a permit. And he takes it out, and it's this note that says, I can do what I want. Signed, Emet-Selch. Like, it's just great. Like, he doesn't actually do anything for you except give you information, but he tags along, and he always has great tidbits to say. And he was just so tragic. And
he saves Y'shtola for us, so he.
Yes, that's true. He brings Y'shtola back again. Yes, I forgot about that.
Which was handy because the first time was a pain in the butt.
All these people being brought back, though, like, it was killing my emotions.
Yeah.
It was absolutely, especially in the one of the ending cinematics when you actually are about to fight Hades, and then he, hits Alphino and Alizé, and then he hits everybody else, and I'm like, they're all dead again, just like an ARR, and then they're fine.
Mm-hmm.
I think it could have been more impactful if he'd left Y'shtola dead a little longer. Like, playtime wise, what was that? What was she dead for? 6 minutes? Like, it wasn't like we went off and like, oh my gosh, we have to grieve and then divert focus and then go do this other battle, and then we get through this dungeon and then he brings her back. It's like, no, like, we get back to town and she's waiting. And I think I would have preferred something a little more impactful, because like, I was still kind of processing that she died and deciding how I felt about it, and she was already back. So like I didn't even get to explore that full gamut of emotions there. So I don't know. I thought Emma was the best. I thought he was the reason that I didn't skip cutscenes. Fear that he would be in there.
I have to say, for me, for him as a character being tragic, absolutely. Like, you saw how he carried himself because he was slouched over. Like, he just had the weight like of the world, and he's just pressing forward. He's doing this, and it's kind of, obviously he's gotten to a point of no return, because it's like, well, I can't stop doing genocides, because it's like we've already, this boulder's been rolling downhill this far. I thought I really enjoyed the interactions between all the scions. I really appreciated just the time gap that had happened, because that allowed for a lot more character development that we've had with these characters for a while, so we could kind of see these relationships. And like with Thancred and with Reen, I really enjoyed that kind of that love triangle with him, with the Oracle, with like with Midfelia and with Reen, and that protective nature, and then contrasting that with Ranjit. I didn't see. I saw, and I could relate to each of the villains in this game. I like with Ranjit, with Innocence, with Vothri, yeah, and with Emet.
Was amazing too.
But with all three, I could relate to a certain aspiration that they were kind of like kind of a virtue that was corrupted, right? Mm-hmm. So it's like with Ranjit, he has been protecting these oracles, and he's reached a point where his mind, the only way he can protect them is to lock them away and to side with essentially the enemies that will protect the Oracle.
His sense of duty is second to none.
Yeah. And then you have Vothri, who was corrupted in the womb, and then from that corruption grew up his whole life being told he's the savior of the realm. And then he has this...
Affluenza.
What do you say?
He's a perfect case of affluenza.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, so too. But with that corruption, with that affluenza, like everything in his world has shown him that he is the savior. These monsters and creatures listen to him. How could and so for him the tragedy is that he was defeated. Like how his worldview came crashing down. That's why it was so appropriate that his primal name, that fight's name, was Innocence, because he was in regards, just somebody who was unfortunately like innocent through it, but obviously his actions were deplorable. And then obviously Emet-Selch
brought that up with chat. I had asked everyone if they really thought that he was evil, or if it was because of the way he was brought up. And a lot of people were saying that he still made, poor choices with that. But his turning into Innocence, let me tell you, that was awesome. It was absolutely awesome. I wish they would have changed the voice for Innocence, though, because the voice, I feel like it matched Vothri, especially with the echo.
Yeah.
But once he actually changed to Innocence, I didn't feel like it matched Innocence as much. But it was still perfect. How he was so upset, saying that everybody told him that that's what it was. And oh my God, when you find him eating the sin eaters, I was like, what is he doing? I didn't know Light Warden could do that. I don't know if he was the only one that did that. I have no idea, but I was disgusted.
I think it was the point. And then he sprouts wings and he just flies off.
He just flies away. And I'm pretty sure I made the comment, I can't believe those wings can hold him after eating all. Like, he even eats the fork or the spoon or whatever it was.
Yeah.
Oh, and when I found out...
I don't think he's proud of it, though. I think it's like that feeling when I eat, like, the second or third sleeve of Thin Mints. It's like, I know this isn't good. Like, don't judge me. That decision is long gone. I'm just going to eat this. I'm not going to eat this till I'm full. I'm going to eat this until I hate myself.
Yep. And I loved him as well. But my other absolute favorite character, and again, forgive me, I cannot remember her name, but... the fat cat woman in Yulemore that is in love with Alphino and just wants the scions. She is so cute. And she gets her husband to make the big Talos, and she pretty much is just like, oh, I know you can do it, honey. And he's like, oh, yeah, I can.
Oh, yeah. Lady Chai, Dula Chai.
Yes, Dula Chai, yes. She is amazing. I love her. She was so upset, too. Like, after you go and you fight Vothri and Innocence, and she's like, are they going to come back? And then she gets really upset not seeing you, thinking that you aren't going to come back at the very, very end. It's just, she's so cute.
Did you play through BFA's story?
No, I only got to the right when Uldir came out. I only did heroic Uldir.
Okay, because in the BFA story, there's this couple, and it's this old turtles, and they're like bickering at each other because they've been married forever. And like as you walk places, one of them will like try to tell you, and then the other one's like, he doesn't care about that. It's like they're like this couple like interrupting each other, and like there's just this beauty and this humor to them. That's how I felt about Dulia Chai. Like that's how it was just this like comic relief of they're just these two real people who don't realize that they're in the middle of something that's like totally changing their realm. They're like, oh, it's just another Thursday. There's just this young boy. Oh, sure, you want to save the realm, honey. Just finish my painting. Like, it's fine.
Like it got to the point where you're like, yeah, no, it's totally cool. They threw the original artist off of Yulmore. That's fine. They're super sweet. He made it. It's okay.
Man, that town was nuts, right? Because it was, and you get it from kind of the mindset, because when you do see the flood of light and the flashback, and you do see all that happening, it's just the world was almost destroyed, and essentially they've lost hope. And so it's like you see the people like the haves, the have-nots. There was a lot of themes, like I said, in this story that was just, some of it kind of hit close to home, because like you talk about Hydaelyn and Zodiark. You talk about, the Ascians being tempered. There is no other way. Like, just like with us, with Hydaelyn, there is no other way. And then, the worst case scenario is that we look back and it's like, oh, we weren't a hero. That's what we were then left to perceive and go from there. So, man, goodness gracious.
And that's what made Ardbert so sad. One of his lines was, we did everything right. We did everything that we were asked to do, and it still didn't help. It made things worse. And then everybody, okay, so I must have missed when I was going through Stormblood, I believe it was, and you were fighting the Warriors of Darkness originally. Yeah. I didn't realize that everybody killed themselves to get to the source.
They did, yeah.
I had no idea. And they're like, everybody's like, yeah, that's why his axe was bloodied. And I'm like, oh my God. So they do that. Then they are, you see Ardbert back on the first, and then you see how they all sacrifice themselves in the flood. And you're like, what? I just can't with these people.
He was going to, and was told like, no, you can't. And like felt terrible.
Yeah.
And so he was left to wander alone, and him and his Choco bro or whatever, like those.
Oh, it's Amuro.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, and that relationship that they had and that story, and then he was able to kind of witness that was so beautiful. I loved it because, as Chris said, especially in the final moments, like the whole story, he felt like a warrior, right? Because he's playing as a warrior. Ardbert is a warrior. The
story was written for warriors. Yeah. I'm glad you got to clear it, but it was written for warrior mains.
And it was so good. I thought that was also a beautiful narrative telling, because here is the Warrior of Light, and he's tired, and so he's going to go rest, and then he can kind of have this moment with the ghost that is longing for some form of connection, and then is then traveling there, witnessing this, and being able to provide some level of exposition for everybody to kind of kick back and enjoy. Xandrii, did you have a favorite moment? Like in all of, let's first say, like, if you were going to have to pick from the entire ARR to now, and then within just Shadowbringers itself. Oh, wow. So you get two options, and then I'll let you pick as many as you want, honestly, because it's just that damn good.
It's probably the most horrible, and everybody's going to be like, you're a horrible person for saying this. It's so sad, but that's why I love it. When... Probably in just Shadowbringers alone, for starters, my favorite moment is when you meet Tesleen and you meet the little child who is essentially becoming a Sin Eater, and you have to get the fruit for him because it's going to be his last meal, so that they can make him feel comfortable before he is going to turn. He has his last meal, and then it's poisoned, and then he dies. That and Tesleen actually wanting to Like that boy was condemned. Like he was
Mhm.
going to change, and it just wasn't his time yet. And he was going to die from the poison in the fruit. But he gets out, and she still protects him and ends up being the one to be turned into a Sin Eater. Like I just thought that was, it really, really hit home, because she knew that he was going to turn anyway. She was still upset. She still went after him, and she probably obviously didn't think that she was going to end up being hit and turned into a Sin Eater, but just that moment where she does, and it's to protect this child who doesn't have much time left, just so that he can wait out his days and still be comfortable, was just like, and it just set the tone for the rest of the expansion. And just that for me was an amazing moment. And then you see her in the dungeon later.
But just that transformation
my
was
God, it
grotesque.
It was sick.
Yeah.
Just the sound effects, everything was just, I probably made the most grotesque faces watching it.
It's dark.
Yeah. And then seeing her in the dungeon, and in my mind, I was like, well, I'm glad she's here, and I'm glad that we're setting her free. And then everyone in chat is like, you're disgusting. That's horrible. You're hurting Tesleen. And I'm like, no, it's a good thing. And they're like, why aren't you crying? And I'm like, because I've already cried 20 times.
Chris, what was your favorite moment?
From Shadowbringers, it's the final moment where Ardbert is basically like hands his axe. We're sitting there at the very end. So I've been a warrior, so like the only way that could have been better is if they swapped out my gear set, so I'm like wielding that axe, like get out of the cutscene is like, oh, you get to keep this now. I would probably have kept that item forever and ever and ever if they had given Ardbert's axe at the end of that scene, because the music kicks in at the exact right moment, and it's been all this build up, and it just felt like, I mean, it was very like one of those moments in the movie where it's like, it was inside you the whole time. Like it was one of those moments, and it was just, after all this conflict and all this turmoil, and the whole time I felt like throughout this story, I do love the new like UI for making selections, but there were some times that the selection I really wanted wasn't offered. And so I felt very like Bandersnatch, like Black Mirror Bandersnatch, where it's like, well, these are both bad options. And it felt like Ardbert actually represented a lot of what I was feeling. And so to get to the end and be like, oh, like Ardbert's been living that journey for like the other side of my feelings the whole time. And then the music kicks in, and it's like, this is going to be awesome. Like, let's go, let's do this. And the final fight, like that whole very end scene of 5.0, I got out of the other end. And as soon as I was calm from it, like a few hours later, my whole fear was, how does 5.1 not feel like we should have just stopped at 5.0? Like, how do they continue this where, because I don't know that it can be better than that. Like, that's the best I've felt the entire time playing this game since ARR.
And his axe was clean. So it was like everything was gone. It wasn't bloody anymore. It was like he was getting to rejoin his party, and it was unreal. But actually, speaking of that, I had a question for you guys.
Go ahead.
So, okay. So when you're about to do that, and you're about to make the final attack, and the light has overwhelmed you, and Ardbert is there to help out. So unless I saw something, which I don't think I did, I think this really happened in the cinematic. Emet-Selch sees Ardbert mesh with you, but then he looks over again, and it looks like one of the ancients. And I thought, my idea was that it was actually Hythlodius, who you talk before you...
On the bench, yeah.
Right. So I thought that even though Hythlodius said, plus the name sounds really close to Hydaelyn, I don't know. But it was just very, very... it was very odd, because I was like, oh my God, he's seeing an ancient there. It must have been Hythlodius. Like, Hythlodius was really there to help you out, not just to watch. But then other people said that they thought that one of their theorycrafts was that the 14 was the council of the ancients, and they said that there was 13, but then there ended up being another person added on for the whole Zodiark Hydaelyn decisions. And so they were saying that since you were going back in time, and that's what he saw was you looking like one of the ancients, that you were actually the 14th.
The 14th.
Yeah,
I just
that's what I hear. Honestly, I mean, this is Theorycrafting 101 because it's highly possible. I actually do believe it. I think that's why we have Heidenland has such a love for us, is because of that kind of event. And when you look at it and you look at the relationship, the Warrior of Light feels like he's the other side of the coin. Where Emet-Selch, La Habrea, and Elidibus do retain memories prior to the Sundering, and everybody else doesn't. The question is, why is that? However, then with with everybody else is like, yeah, I think we are the opposite side of that, but we were part of that council, and that kind of is reflective of why there were 14 shards and the source and all of that. I think it's gonna be neat to see, because it's great that Shadowbringers answered so many questions, but at the same time, it's fun to see what kind of questions we've seen raised from that, and let alone obviously like with who is the Warrior of Light as that character. Like, have we existed this long? Was it Emet-Selch recognizing us from then? Are we connected with with the ancients in that way, or are we just somebody who came to be? But look, think, feel, those being kind of the three words that we were introduced to the game. I kind of like to try to apply that to the story overall. Like, is that still kind of prevalent? I can't say for sure. Like, it wouldn't surprise me. I like to believe that theory personally because of that, but that's just where I fall. Chris, where do you fall?
I mean, I think a lot of the questions really, they felt very intentionally placed. They felt like breadcrumbs. So if they weren't intentionally placed, that's going to be really frustrating looking back, because the breadcrumbs felt really logical. Like, a lot of these questions we're asking are questions around the ancients, and it feels very logical to me that there's a beast tribe in the Tempest that helps us explore that. There's this beautiful zone with all of this lore back there, and we have a chance to establish an entire city in the past, and they could have just had it take place in like Emmett's consciousness as like a side quest that we just go into one time and you can see with New Game Plus. But instead, it's this whole zone that's fleshed out with an aetheryte. So that tells me that hopefully that's a breadcrumb that we can go back there and we can further explore who are we, why do they recognize us, why can we talk to one that seems to have some level of sentient thought outside of what just, like, if that whole city was formed of Emet-Selch's memories, they would all kind of be limited to what Emet-Selch thought of them, and it didn't feel like he was. It felt like Hythlodius was able to function outside of that. And I wonder if what's fleshing him out is our memory of him. I'm wondering if we're the other half of that and why there was more to him than that. And it's also an interesting way to go back and explore, like we talk about killing Ascians. Well, once they're killed, that's the end of it until we can start going back to the past. Now we can go back and have conversations with anybody we want.
It's going to be neat. Like, time travel obviously is an interesting loop. My favorite moment would literally be like where obviously the crystal, Exarch is revealed to, I don't know why I'm drawing a blank on his name, but that is one of the most exciting, especially as somebody who put the lore and the story summary of the Crystal Tower together. I was like, it's him. It's got to be him. Okay, confirmed. Excellent. And then with that character, though, he was so interesting because he went, obviously the 8th Umbral era had occurred that had caused him to go back in time. And then he ended up going 100 years further back than he expected. He pulls in the Ascians, and then the goal was to try to prevent the 8th, Umbral era. And his whole plan was for him to kind of be obliterated because, we prevented it. Well, then I never needed to come back in time. I'm gone. But then he remains. And so I wonder, like, did we just delay the 8th Umbral era? Did we delay that calamity? Or is there another thread of time out there that continues on where that happened? And if so, like, through, like, with the time travel and dimensional travel, like, is it possible to be able to jump around not only to different dimensions, aka the shards, but either different timelines? My theory there, what I would say is I think that it's probably just delayed. I think we've only delayed the inevitable with the 8th, and the ideal will be some kind of exodus, some kind of arc that we use to try to move people to and from, kind of like the Void arc. Go ahead, Chris.
I think we cause it. I think if we'd never messed with this, it wouldn't have happened. I think we saw it coming, and our actions are the actions that ultimately lead to it.
Well, it's the Oedipus kind of scenario. Xandrii, what do you think? Are we going to cause the eighth emerald? Like, or does that time exist? Like, it's so fun. I love talking about it.
I I honestly really, really, really like that idea. I like that opinion because I didn't think about that. I was just thinking, oh, we did it. We've all been celebrating. That's so great that we prevented it. But you're right. He's still there. You still go back. You go with Reen and Thancred, and you find Eden. So there's obviously still, the original Sin Eater Lightward, and I can't remember which. I think it was Sin Eater.
The original one would be Eden. Yeah.
Even after, and that's, you can't unlock that until after you do the MSQ. So yeah, I mean, it makes sense that you either didn't prevent anything and you're just delaying it, or that you are the cause of it. That would be, and wouldn't it be crazy? Wouldn't it be neat if you were the ones that ended up causing it and now you don't really have any associates to help you? Ardbert is back with his party. Emmett is, as far as we know, dead. We've used all of those shards to kill him. The Crystal Exarch, was working on his power from the tower. The further he is away from it, he can't help you because he's bound to it. It just, and then, Amarat, regardless of if it was Emmett's memory, and even though, Hythlodeus was able to, think and speak for himself outside of the actual era and know who you were, you don't have that anymore. It's ruins now because you got rid of Emmett. So it would be kind of crazy if you caused it with all of this stuff by intervening, which again would be like the whole history thing, or like, what are we doing now with our action IRL? But at the same time, you don't necessarily, other than the Scions, have a lot of assets anymore because so many people have, either sacrificed themselves or died. It's just, that's crazy.
So on that note, though, that we also have the Scions still marooned on the first, unable to currently leave. We are able to still bounce back and forth, and then obviously on the source, I'm so in love with the first. I'm so in love with the first. I'm I would have a house here if they'd let me. I don't want to leave it because I think it's just court, and that's why I'm so pro rejoining. I'm can we get can we get this world in our world? Can we what are we missing? Because that's where, from my perspective, seeing how beautiful and how awesomely designed kind of the zones and everything was, the fairies and all of that, I was man, this is what Eorzean needs. All of this, why is it separate? And then you realize we all got a piece of it. We don't have the whole thing, the whole beauty of it all together. And so that's kind of where I fall. But beyond the sundering, beyond that, narratively speaking, that has me the most excited for the next 2 years to unfold. Because what they've done is not only did they deliver, I think, a superb, and I have here on my notes, it is one of the highest rated games in 2019, perhaps even the highest rated MMO expansion in history, and I think it's definitely well deserved in that regards. Where do we go from here? What do you want to see in October or early November?
This sounds so silly, but again, because I'm biased, I want to see Elidibus bring back Ascians that we think we've killed. I think it would be cool to have La Habrea. I think it would be cool to have, Emmett back to be oh, actually, what you thought you were doing that was good didn't actually help anything. Yeah. And I want the whole Hydaelyn story more fleshed out, because everything that you learn after going to the first is kind of okay, so if Hydaelyn was really good and has been able to communicate with us, why has she not communicated that?
Right.
She does it. It's not even lying. It's a withholding of information.
I mean, what if we're tempered in the point where she could tell us all day long and we don't all right,
it's insane. And I'm really excited to see. I know that we're eventually going to see it with the patches, but it's the first time that I've been completely caught up since I've been playing. And I was so angry with Gaius coming in and trying to pit himself against Xenos. And I'm no, I love Gaius. He's so cute now without his mask. And I don't know. I'm just excited to see, like Chris was saying, where do you go from here? Is bringing the Garleans back and actually going back and fighting the Empire and seeing what's going on there and what Xenos ends up doing with it now that he is, killed his dad and he doesn't want all of these petty wars. Like, he just wants the hunts. Like, how do you make that as big as what you've just done? That, and I have not done Eden yet. So I'm excited to see how that really connects to the story, and the Academia dungeon, which I'm excited to really see, how many of the creatures were actually, or have gotten out that they don't know about, because they're like, no. And I actually, for the very first time, I was upset too about the ancients, because I was like, oh, they're an amazing people. I can't believe all of this happened. I side with them. And then they're like, oh yeah, the guys next to us, we use them to fight against our creatures in here for our experiments. And I'm like, what? They use the Ondo? I was actually upset about that. I don't know if I read it correctly.
Have you played 8? Final Fantasy 8?
Yes, I have.
You'll really appreciate some stuff that's coming up.
I've never beaten it, though. I've seen the end cinematic, but I didn't realize that at the end, you only had specific party members that it chose for you. And I was so angry the first time I did it, because I didn't know that I didn't want to kill off other party members to make sure it was the ones that I had actually leveled up. So I haven't beaten it. But yeah, so I love the music. I actually unlocked Eden today, but I'm just excited to see what it is going forward. Like, I want to see Zodiark. I don't want to see Hades holding, a Zodiark the original Zodiark crystal.
Yeah.
I don't want him to be a statue in Academia. Like, I want to see Zodiark. Like, I want to see if Zodiark can change the warrior of light, darkness. I want to see what he brings, or she, I guess, brings to the story.
I think Heidelin's female, Zodiarc's male.
Yeah, that's what I assumed, but I didn't want to be.
Well, and it's just also like, and not that maybe they don't have gender to be specific, but the voice of Heidelin is female, and then when you hear the music, the voice of Zodiark is actually is masculine, and they just kind of have that contrast kind of to it in that regards. Now, I do want to actually jump at like a little off topic to an interesting question from Kevin. Says, so consider that we were able to rejoin without destruction. What about the individuals that are rejoined on the different shards? What person or personality of the individuals that are rejoined is primary? And what if people on different shards are married and they have children? Do parents not know their children or know them? Do their people know their spouse? And I'm going to jump in like with my thoughts on it, is that while there are people who might remind us of people on the source, they are separate individuals. So if, like, let's say the rejoining happened without destruction, like, you could actually see that could cause a lot of drama and confusion where, let's say you had a character that's a beloved character that's passed away, and all of a sudden they're walking around and their dad's like, wait, like, how are you here? And he's like, oh, I'm not that person. I'm not your son. Like, I've had my own history in life. I just happen to have that kind of connection. So you could end up having some kind of doppelganger situations set up, but it wouldn't be that, like, we rejoined and all of a sudden there's not a version of you in my mind on the source, unless I missed something. Chris, what are your thoughts?
So they've addressed that. So right at the beginning of when you first jump over to the first, you actually run into the same brothers that we ran into. If you think back to the beginning of kind of like ARR, those brothers in the caravan and stuff, like, it's that very same story being told. And so you see how there's similar personalities. So if you kind of imagine a person as like almost like their D&D traits, right? So that D&D trait set was still out there. So it's very that nature versus nurture. So that very nature seed was put out in both realms, but because of nurture, because of the difference in the realms and the difference in the history and the lives they were given, they ultimately became different adults who made they became different people because they were given different options. So re-merging them, but according to Emmett, the problem you would have is that neither of them are whole. And so both of them they might have feelings of emptiness or flawedness, that searching for something more. Mm-hmm. In theory, what kind of saying is, if you remerged us, we wouldn't have that. So it does kind of bring into that almost like complementary. It's why it's tragic to think about like people having to die, but if in the aspect of dying, they could be reborn complete, there is a beauty to what the Asians are asking for. It costs a great deal to get there. Mm-hmm.
And it's not necessarily able to be explained in a way to the common people that they would understand that sacrifice to be whole again.
I was like, hey, trust me,
But
like we're gonna murder, everybody's gonna die.
yeah.
I mean, that's like we hear these horror stories on the news, like at random once a decade. It's like, oh, okay, everybody drank the Kool-Aid, and then it's like, oh no. Hopefully that ship picked him up. The so with that, like there's just so much to love, and I want to kind of contrast this to the storytelling in other games, right? Like obviously you coming over from World of Warcraft, that has such a rich and deep lore that just like with 14 was that's built upon by previous games, right? So there's people who are like, oh yeah, that guy, and he's this guy's son, and so and so forth. But obviously the presentation is different. I don't want to compare the presentation. I think that in my mind that just puts WoW in an unfair advantage. But you've spoken so lovingly about like World of Warcraft's like lore and story. Like what is it about that aspect from those two games that you really feel drawn to? What is it about like those characters, and what themes are similar that you could draw a connection to?
Honestly, I feel like the big difference between the storytelling that drives me to like each game is that Final Fantasy's MSQ is more, you have a straight MSQ. No matter where you are, you have a couple quests in this area, you have a couple quests in this area, but regardless, you're doing the MSQ the whole time. So you're on that main story if you do so choose to do those quests, which is great because that keeps you enveloped in the actual story rather than the areas around you. Or maybe that's just me coming in as a new player, just going through the whole MSQ and not doing anything else until after. But with WoW, to me, it's more of the underlying tones of the main story. So like you get how, the Pantheon was, you get, the light and the void, you get how, humans and dwarves and gnomes are created, but you get that through undertones of the story. Whereas each zone with their quests is more pertinent to that area. So I was trying to actually talk to a couple of people about this, where I love pretty much different zones in FF14 purely because of certain things, because you see certain characters, because there's certain music, like Raktika, come on, Lahi, seriously, come on. So I love it because of that. But certain zones in WoW, I love because of the story around the zone. Because you're not doing one straight MSQ story, you're learning about everybody in the area and how the area came to be and why it's under siege or why you're protecting it or what have you. And again, that's because I haven't done a lot of side quests in each zone in Final Fantasy. But I do like that you get the main story from little bits like that. And a lot of people also say that you don't get enough of the main story unless you read, the chronicles or all of the novels. But it's kind of like, to give an example, like I love Northrend because you learn about the Valkyr, you learn more about the Forsaken, you learn more about Sylvanas, but you learn about the zones themselves. You learn about Icecrown, you learn about the events that happened in Icecrown, you learn about Grizzly Hills. Grizzly Hills has the music. You learn about why there are god kings in Grizzly Hills. You learn about why dragons are brought in. Whereas I love the MSQ in Final Fantasy, but I don't get that for all of the zones. Like I like the zone, like I said, Raktika, I love the music. Or I can say, well, I really liked the way the MSQ was in Ishgard. I liked hearing about the fight between, the humans and the dragons, or the Elizin, because there were some there too. I like the whole story between Shiva and Hraesvelgr and how he devoured her, and it's just, and how Iceheart thought that she was going to, she really was using her body as a vessel for Shiva when it was just her idea of Shiva. So I like those areas because of the MSQ in them. I don't necessarily like them because of the atmosphere that I would get, if that makes any sense. I'm trying to explain it in a way that it does, but
so WoW and 14 have both obviously gotten better at storytelling. So the
Mhm.
way they tell story in their current expansions is very different than the way if we back up to like the early and mid 2000s. So
Yeah.
like there's just the technical hurdles that they've come over. There's not nearly as much locked behind reading. There's a much better player experience. But from a purely lore perspective, if we take everything in the context of when it came out, so we say if it was told good in 2004, that let's just assume that all ages well. WoW is much more, in my mind, a journey of you as a person, like as a member of the Horde or a member of the Alliance, and you're just one, and you can choose to engage with that as much or as little as you want. You are one of the many, and you grow, and as you mature, you become this celebrated hero. And so that's one of the issues where power creep comes from, is at this point we've got such a prestigious like resume that it's that they have to treat us really valuably right from the get-go, because that's how they chose to build it. And 15 years of destroying the biggest, baddest dragons has made us kind of big deals. But we got there slowly. So if you played back in Classic, it was really neat because it justified in my mind these like quests where you have to go like collect bear livers or go clean out my scarecrows, because it was like, well, I'm a nobody. I don't have weapon skill. I don't have good gear. I haven't done anything. And you earn that. So there was this like building in this journey where I felt like I owned my character more than I owned Horde or Alliance. Like my identity was tied to just my individual character, which is why I've never done like a race change or a character change. It's why I got attached to that. But in 14, I'm given a story. I'm given much more of like a Zelda type approach or a single player RPG approach, where it's like there really isn't player agency, because no matter what options you choose, no matter what order, like you ultimately end up in the same place. We can all three have this conversation. We all three had the same dungeons, the same cutscenes. There isn't anything there. We were all given a very formulaic, beautifully told story. And so I think they're just inherently different in how they tackle story. And it's something that like 14 has struggled with, saying, wow, what if somebody doesn't want this much story or doesn't want this exact story? How do we offer that to them? Because we can't. And WoW, on the other hand, has said, World of Warcraft has said, like, okay, how do we start getting people on the same page? Because you may not have done the zones in the same order, or you may have skipped the quests in certain zones. So you may have gaps in your knowledge, because we did some tidbits in Eastern Plaguelands, but you never did Eastern Plaguelands. And so you just have no basis for a whole thing. And they really don't have anything to build on. So they've had to start building in MSQ. There is MSQ in World of Warcraft now. So for everybody who hasn't played recently, there are required quests in Battle for Azeroth that you have to do to unlock certain content. And you have to go on this war quest. And that's them starting to say, maybe there's something to this MSQ thing. They're not doing it for everything, so it's not nearly as I guess forced as it is in 14, where we tell every new player, do your MSQ, do your MSQ. Like, it is still very optional, but it says there is sections of our content, not all of it, but sections of our content that very much need to be tied behind a beautiful cinematic experience that gets everybody on the same page.
There's risk and reward. Xandrii, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, no, you're fine. I just wanted to, like, that's what I was trying to explain, even though I was kind of circumventing and going in circles with what I wanted to say. But that's what I was trying to say, where it's more of like where you choose to level, it's more area based rather than just a straight MSQ. Like, so that's essentially what I was trying to say. But I did like to level that way for WoW. I wanted to be lore master. I wanted to go to every single zone. I wanted to know, what went on in every zone. I wanted to do all of the quests, obviously, but it's so cool that you can just do the whole story in 14 in a straight shot, because I feel like it's more immersive. And like Chris was saying, I haven't played since you had to start doing war fronts. I haven't played since you had to start actually doing the story, particularly in WoW. So I wouldn't be able to comment on it, but from what I played, that's what I liked about it. So like for me, specifically, it was like, oh, for WoW, I liked this zone for the story. But then for FF14, it's like, oh, well, I liked this moment, or I liked this cutscene, or I liked the introduction of this character.
Mm-hmm. So that brings up obviously kind of an interesting and kind of our final way to kind of segment the podcast about the story, though, is that as incredible as it is, what we saw recently, Skill Up, he just finished it at like 362 hours. Have you checked your playtime at all, Xandrii?
I haven't checked it, actually. I just learned how to check my instance.
Nice.
So that was a big deal for me.
So if you ever get on, just do /playtime, and that will tell you how long you've actually been playing the game.
Yeah.
And it was, so when I looked at 362 hours, I'm like, yes, I love that you specifically have and invested yourself into that, because it really, like, as a longtime player, for you to come in and be like, really kind of dive in and love it, that like makes me so happy, because we've been for a long time like saying like, yes, Final Fantasy guys, there is a magic here, you got to come check it out. At the same time, and they've talked about with like 5.3 shortening kind of the ARR stuff, it's like
Right.
that is a lot of stuff. Like, by the way, we're going to be going into our 6th season here in 2021. Best get on the train now, everybody. Otherwise, you're going to like, it's going to be what, 420 hours, like 500. It's just going to be just nuts when it comes down to putting in the time to play the game, etc. And it's like, yeah, go watch all of Breaking Bad, and then we can watch the next season. Yeah, right. I do too. I use that because it's such a well done story, and it has a kind of a complete beginning and end. And with 14, I feel like it's going to have that as well. It's going to have that kind of that full complete story. What do we do? Like, like as somebody who's played through the story now, and you're now officially caught up as you go into Eden, I'm just curious as your thoughts. Like, is it a problem? Is it a big problem? Or is it something that people just need to do it and join us?
Well, for me, I now have, it sounds really silly, but I have a schedule now of things that I want to do, things that I've missed because I was focused so much on the MSQ, and stuff that chat has said that they want to see me do, like Hildebrand. I got up to Twintania in Coils, but I want to finish Coils. I want to do Alexander, I want to do Omega. But honestly, it was really funny because yesterday was the first day that I had completely streamed without having to do the MSQ. And one of the things that I've mentioned that I wanted to do because of being data center locked, that I would like, even though I know that it's crazy, I would like to have a character on each data center so I could play with everybody. As nuts as that sounds. But everybody was like, oh, yeah. And they're like, I would love to play with you. And I'm like, well, I just really want to do the story again. And they're like, you just finished all of that. Like, you have all of the ARR stuff that the 50 quests or whatever afterwards that makes people, especially streamers that are starting out, not want to play anymore. But for me, that was never a question. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the fetch quests. I enjoyed, just sending messages to people. So there's a lot of stuff that I want to do. I want to keep doing all of the side quests that I didn't do. I want to unlock dungeons that I didn't do. I do know there's one right after Kugane, when you get to the underwater area. Apparently there's a really cool dungeon that you can unlock there. But I missed it because I was doing the MSQ. Right. So I want to go back and unlock that. But I want to do the MSQ again. And everybody's like, well, wait for New Game Plus. Wait for, the patch that shortens all of the level gaps. And I'm sitting there going, well, I enjoyed it. I don't really want to, but yeah, I think there's definitely a lot of things that I want to do. Oh, and when you were talking about the magic of the game, for me, that actually, I loved playing the game. I had a ton of fun with it. I loved Shadowbringers. Shadowbringers by far is probably on its own, if you could call it, I know it's an expansion, but if you could call it a standalone game for Game of the Year, I would vote for it because I think it's that good. Yeah. But for me, the magic actually started when I watched a documentary about the fall and rise of FF14. Yeah. And seeing what it was and what it turned into, and the team that put all of the patch, all of the work into the game to make it playable, and at the same time work on, ARR and have the revival essentially of the game tied into the story. So not even a new game, and it really hit me hard. And I watched the whole thing, and just listening to Yoshi P speak, he's a rock star, by the way, and listening to everybody, know that the original, 1.0 essentially wasn't ready, and people knew it, but it was only like when other people were looking at other people's work, they knew it, but they thought that the stuff that they had produced was perfect, and it just meshed together. And the UI issues and the menu issues, and just seeing that change enough was magic for me. And I was already into Stormblood by the time I finally watched this documentary, and I was like, I already was so enthralled with all of the content that I was seeing that I wanted to do it all. But now it puts even more into it. It's nice to know that the devs play their own game. They haven't lost sight of it. They know what changes need to be made. They're looking at things every day. They actually take constructive criticism. They were able to make this into an amazing experience, even if it's not, your style, even if you're not, super huge on a story-based MMO, which doesn't make any sense to me, but whatever. It's unbelievable. It's amazing. It's so magical. I was so completely moved by the amount of work that these people put into this game that I want to do everything, obviously because I want to, but I also want to do it to show that, hey, I appreciate your content and I want to do every bit of content you have to offer because I know how much work you put into it. So it's amazing. It's absolutely amazing.
So where can people find you? Like, because you're saying what you're going to be working on, non-MSQ stuff now, maybe going multiple characters. Where can people find you? Like, you've been doing a lot of stuff over on YouTube as well. So
I'm looking to start doing a lot more on the YouTube, more story-based stuff. I have a list that I want to do, husbando lists and waifu lists that I think would be funny. Right now it's just reactions from stream, but it's going to be much more. So I actually have a URL for the YouTube now. I try to put up at least one. Thank you. I try to put up at least 1 to 2 videos a week. At the moment, it is youtube.com, obviously, /c/Xandrii. So you can find all of my reactions if you don't get to see anything live and you don't like to watch VODs on Twitch. But I will be putting up actual videos for YouTube that are specifically made for YouTube. And then on Twitch, it's obviously twitch.tv/Xandrii. And that's where I am most of the time, if I'm not at work, obviously. But during the week, I stream 7 to 10 EST. And then on the weekends, depending on if I have community D&D or a community night or whatever, it's usually 2 to 6 p.m. or I've been doing marathons on the weekends, like 12-hour marathons. It's ridiculous.
That's intense. Yeah. That's intense. I get like 3 hours and I'm like, that was fun. Bye, everybody. Chris, also for anybody watching this, links will all be in the description of this video over on YouTube, and then obviously for all the podcast places as well. So guys, check out the links. Be sure to be following Xandrii. Go tell her hi. Check out her streams and check out her YouTube videos. She's an incredible talent. Chris, where can people find us? What are we working on?
We've been starting to stream more to YouTube and Mixer, so we've been doing a little bit of that as well as some Twitch. So we're starting to just stream more in general. I know Brian's gearing up for Destiny. I'm gearing up for WoW Classic. I actually downloaded Destiny and got a little bit of that in. Coming up on level 30. I hadn't touched it since we bailed out of Destiny, so I logged in at level 20 and then I didn't remember how to play the game. So it's been a fun journey there. I'm looking forward to next week. We have Avalon Star coming on to talk about Destiny and Final Fantasy. He's been streaming a lot of Destiny lately, but he actually put out a bunch of UI guides on 14 a little while back. He's one of the ones that sat at our table with us out at the media tour, so it'd be interesting to kind of circle back on some of those subjects. Last week we had Datto from Destiny, so lots of Destiny content coming up as they prepare to make a major move, which is really exciting. And then, guys, for those of you tuned in, these shows run like an hour. If any part of this you either missed or you want to share a specific part with a friend, remember that we're doing a highlights channel now where this gets broken up. So this will be reposted to YouTube in its entirety, but then you can go watch individual sections over on Casually Hardcore Highlights.
Yes. And I think we're almost to 400 subscribers on the new channel. So thanks, everybody, for that support. All right. Well, I think that is going to wrap up our epic story spoiler content. Xandrii, you are fantastic. Thanks for taking the time. But we'll go ahead and conclude the normal way. For Work to Game, my name's Brian.
My name's Chris.
Megan.
Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. We hope you have a fantastic day, and we'll see you next time. Take care.